Introduction. It was April 22nd, 1947. The Brooklyn Dodgers and the Philadelphia Phillies were playing. After 7 innings, the score was tied 0-0. Jackie Robinson walked toward home plate, swinging his bat. He was in a slump. He just couldn't seem to hit the ball. He couldn't seem to catch it either. His team was expecting more from him. So were the fans in Ebbets Field. After all, he was the first African-American player in the major league. As Jackie stepped up to the plate, he couldn't believe what he heard. Insults were flying out of the Philadelphia Phillies dugout. He almost put down his bat and quit the game of baseball forever. Then he thought of his wife Rachel sitting in the stands. He thought of all the people who wanted him to succeed. Planting his feet firmly in the ground, Jackie waited for the pitch. The ball shot toward him, and with a tremendous smack, he sent it into center field. Later, in a daring move, Jackie stole 2 bases. The fans jumped to their feet. In blue at the top on page 3 it says, Jackie Robinson played first base and then second base for the Brooklyn Dodgers. Chapter 1. First Base, 1919 to 1940. Jackie Robinson was a legendary baseball player, but he was more than one of the best players. He was a man who stood up for his own and other people's rights. Jackie was born on January 31st, 1919, on a large farm in Georgia. It was the same farm where his grandparents had been enslaved. Now, the Robinson family worked on the farm as sharecroppers. That meant they had to give much of the money they got for their crops to the landowner. When Jackie was 1 year old, his mother, Mally, moved the family to California. By working hard, she was able to buy a house. At the bottom above the picture in blue, it says, when the Robinsons moved to Pasadena, California, it was a white neighborhood. The top of page 5. Mac Robinson. In 1936, the Robinson family gathered around the radio. They listened to the Olympics being held in Germany. Mac Robinson, Jackie's older brother, was racing in the 200-meter dash. He was ahead until the last minute when Jesse Owens beat him. Mac returned home with 2 silver medals. The Robinsons lived in a mostly white neighborhood in Pasadena, California. At that time, many neighborhoods were segregated. Some neighbors were unhappy about the Robinsons living close to them and tried to get Mally to move. She refused, making it clear that she and her family were there to stay. However, at school, no one minded having Jackie around. Everybody wanted to be on his team. It didn't matter if the game was baseball, football, or basketball. Jackie's older brother, Mac, was good at sports, too. Sports were fine, but Mally Robinson wanted her children to go to college. Jackie attended junior college nearby so that he could stay close to home and help out his mother. At school, Jackie played football, baseball, and ran on the track team. Sometimes he even played more than one sport in the same season. One morning, Jackie jumped 25 feet 6.5 inches, 7 meters 16.5 centimeters, in the long jump at a track meet. Then got into a car, changed into his baseball uniform, and made it to a baseball game in time to help his team win. Jackie then went to the University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA. He was a sports star there too, playing football, basketball, baseball, and running track. But after 2 years, Jackie quit school. Still wanting to help support his mother, Jackie worked briefly at a camp teaching young kids to play sports. Then the Honolulu Bears, a semi-professional football team from Hawaii, offered him a job. In blue, it reads, Jackie broke his brother Mac's record in the long jump. Chapter 2, Second Base, 1941 to 1945. On weekends, Jackie played football, and during the week he worked in construction. When the football season ended in November, he was eager to return to California to see his family. His ship left Hawaii on December 5th, 1941. The Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor 2 days later. The United States was at war. In blue above the picture it reads, there were 8 United States battleships at Pearl Harbor. During the attack, 5 of them were sunk. At the top of page 9, Joe Louis. For 12 years, Joe Louis held the title of World's Heavyweight Boxing Champion of the World. From 1942 to 1946, Louis retired from fighting to serve in the Army. President Franklin Roosevelt told him, Joe, we need muscles like yours to beat Germany. Jackie joined the Army. He was sent to Fort Riley, Kansas, where he became a second lieutenant. At the fort, Jackie met his hero, the fighter Joe Louis. In 1944, when Jackie was about to leave the Army, something happened that changed his life. He saw another soldier throwing a baseball. The two began talking. Jackie learned that the Kansas City Monarchs were looking for baseball players. The Monarchs were a team in the Negro Leagues. At the time, the Major League was made up of white-only baseball teams. Baseball had first become a big sport after the Civil War. Black and white men played together on teams at first, but by the early 1900s, there were no African American players in the Major League. African Americans formed their own teams and leagues, so Jackie wrote to the Monarchs. The team hired him almost immediately. In blue next to the pitcher it says, Satchel Paige was one of the best pitchers in baseball. From the Negro Leagues, he moved to the Major Leagues. Paige pitched until he was 59 years old. Some people thought it was time to integrate the Major League. One of them was Wendell Smith, a sports writer for the Philadelphia Courier, an African-American newspaper. Smith went to see Branch Rickey. Rickey was general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers. Smith urged Rickey to hire African-American players for the Dodgers, and he mentioned Jackie Robinson in particular. In August 1945, Rickey sent a scout to watch Jackie play. In blue next to the pitcher it reads, in one season with the Kansas City Monarchs, Robinson led the team in hitting. Chapter 3, Third Base, 1945 to 1955. The scout realized that Jackie's talent was no fluke. It was real. The scout wanted Jackie to fly to New York to talk to Branch Rickey. When they met, Rickey had a surprise for Jackie. Rickey wanted an African-American player for the Dodgers. That player was Jackie Robinson. Jackie's mouth gaped open in disbelief when he heard the news. I know you're a good ball player, Rickey told Jackie. What I don't know is whether you have guts. In blue next to the pitcher it reads, Jackie Robinson signs a contract to play for the Montreal Royals, a Canadian team. Branch Rickey is standing right behind Jackie in this photograph. Branch Rickey. Branch Rickey had first-hand knowledge of the effects of discrimination. He was once a college baseball coach. An African-American player named Charlie Thomas was on the team. In South Bend, Indiana, a hotel refused to give Thomas a room. Rickey asked the hotel to put a cot in his room. Thomas could sleep there. For the rest of his life, Rickey worked for the equal treatment of African-American players in baseball. Rickey wanted Jackie to know what to expect. Some fans would be upset. So would players on other baseball teams. So would some of Jackie's own teammates. People would mutter insults. Jackie couldn't say anything back. Would he be able to do that? Jackie didn't know if he could. Then he thought about his family. He thought about the young African Americans in the United States. He also thought about the risk Branch Rickey was taking. Jackie decided to take a chance too. He agreed to join the Brooklyn Dodgers. First, Jackie would play for the Montreal Royals, a Canadian team in the minor league. Then, in a year, he would join the Brooklyn Dodgers. The Montreal Royals' first game was with the Jersey City Giants. Jackie walked to second base. He expected to be greeted with boos. Instead, the stands were packed. Many of the fans were African Americans who had come to support Jackie. Hitting a ball over 340 feet, 104 meters, Jackie scored a home run. The fans went wild, even the Jersey City fans. Soon the Royals returned to Montreal. The hometown fans loved Jackie. One sports writer wrote, for Jackie Robinson and the city of Montreal, it was love at first sight. But Jackie was under a lot of pressure. It was hard for him to sleep and eat. A doctor told Jackie to take a break from baseball, but he refused. That year, the Montreal Royals won the Minor League World Series. Jackie wondered if Branch Rickey would keep his word. Would Rickey move him to the Brooklyn Dodgers? In blue, at the bottom it reads, the Montreal Royals belong to the International League. They won the league's World Series. Jackie was named the most valuable player in that league in 1946. In blue, next to the pitcher at the top it reads, although this photo of Jackie Robinson and Phillies manager Ben Chapman looks friendly, Chapman had to be warned to stop his players from hurling insults at Jackie. On April 9, 1947, the Brooklyn Dodgers announced that Jackie Robinson had joined the team. His number was 42. His position was first base. Jackie didn't make a good first impression. He couldn't get a hit. He also made mistakes on the field. Then the Dodgers played the Philadelphia Phillies on April 22nd. Snickering and muttering, the Phillies players and coaches insulted Jackie. As he said later, the haters had almost won that round. They had succeeded in getting me so upset that I was an easy out. In the end, thanks to Jackie, the Dodgers won. The other Dodgers had been upset by the Phillies' insults too, and they rallied around Jackie. That game was a turning point. A friendship soon developed between Jackie and shortstop Pee Wee Reese. It began at a game in Boston. Fans were shouting at Reese, who was from Kentucky. They wanted to know how he could play baseball with an African American. Reese didn't even flinch. In answer, he walked up and put an arm around Jackie's shoulders. The Dodgers were the National League champions in 1949, 1952, and 1953. In 1955, they won the World Series. Jackie became famous. Above the picture in blue, it reads, Ebbets Field was home to the Brooklyn Dodgers from 1913 to 1958. Jackie Robinson played his first major league ball game there. Chapter 4, Home, 1956 to 1962. Times were changing. More African Americans, such as Roy Campanella and Don Newcomb, joined the team. Other baseball teams hired African American players too. In 1950, Branch Rickey left the Dodgers. Many people, including Jackie, felt he had been forced to leave. Then, in 1956, the Dodgers traded Jackie to the New York Giants. Like any other baseball player then, Jackie had no say in the decision. Jackie decided to retire from baseball. The fans begged Jackie to stay, but he knew he had to move on. He was 37 years old. On the top of 19 and blue under the picture. In the early 1950s, a movie was made about Jackie Robinson's life. Jackie starred as himself. By this time, Jackie had married and had 3 young children. Leaving baseball would mean that he could spend more time with his wife Rachel and his children, Jackie Jr., Sharon, and David. Jackie decided to take a job in business. Along the bottom of pages 18 and 19, it is a timeline of Jackie Robinson's baseball career. Go ahead and take time to look it over. Hank Aaron. Jackie Robinson inspired another baseball great, Hank Aaron. Aaron said, I realized the only reason I made it was because of a man like Jackie Robinson. I would like the next generation to understand a man who stood so tall. After he retired, Jackie received many honors. The NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, gave him an award in 1956. This award meant a lot to Jackie. In 1962, Jackie Robinson received the greatest award of all. He was elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame. In a speech accepting the Hall of Fame honor, Jackie gave credit to the people who had helped him. Today, everything is complete. I cannot be here without the advice and guidance of 3 of the most wonderful people I know. My advisor and wonderful friend, Branch Rickey. My mother, Mrs. Mally Robinson, and my wife, Rachel Robinson. I've been riding a cloud since the election, and I don't think I'll come down. Along the bottom of pages 20 and 21, there is a timeline of Jackie Robinson's life, starting in 1905 all the way through 2005. Go ahead and look it over, please.